Hey guys, so in the last section we went through junior performance and kind of how do we develop juniors. In this section we're going to go through building to elite athletic performance. So what do I do with my athletes here, and kind of how can we start to build this idea of working through the journey, kind of getting more towards high level performance and high level movement. So what are we applying? Now, I know in the previous section I said development over results. Well, now when we think towards elite sport, results always come above development. You're working with professional athletes, results are more important than them getting 10 kilos more on their back squat. So this is where we need to be a bit smarter with how we program to do these things, because our coaches aren't going to be happy if we injure our athletes, if they're too tired to train, because coaches will always put training above physical performance, most likely, and physical development more importantly. So they are looking for results from their athletes. The quality of movement is going to be a bit more specific. So we're going to be looking a bit more at specific movements to sports rather than movements which aren't necessarily super specific, but we know are good plyometric movements. So we need to start kind of thinking about the specificity of what we're doing. Obviously, we're still looking to increase the rate of force development and the increased loading possibilities. This is in comparison to our juniors. Now, this is true and untrue at the same time. Now, we can take time out of training to physically develop our junior athletes, but it's very difficult to do that with elite sportsmen who need to train, need to have skill session, tactics. There's a lot of different kind of training forms they need to fit into their week. So we have increased loading possibilities because their bodies are ready for a higher level load. But at the same time, we need to be smart with how we get these things in. Now, I'm going to go through this a bit later on, but one of my favorite ways to kind of use plyometric activities and plyometric training is in the warm-up. As part of contrast with a back squat, say we do a back squat, a set of back squat, use that to potentiate drop jumps or box jumps directly afterwards, okay? Or kind of micro dosing, where we look at using small doses of plyometric training in an unfatigued state. Okay, we need to remember these foot contacts. Now, obviously, like I said before, these are good guidelines and good ways for us to prescribe our sessions, but still, quality of movement will always be first. We want to get our athletes to a stage where every contact matters. If the contact didn't matter, they shouldn't have done it. Okay, every contact has to matter. What's the rationale here? So we need to bear in mind that anything we add increases injury risk. We know that. And like I said, our coaches, head coaches, are not going to be happy with us. And this could put our job on the line if we injure a key player or we put them in a position where they're not physically able to play or train at 100%. But we know that this elicits positive athletic adaptations. We can increase robustness. We can increase rate of force development. We can increase speed, jumping, and strength. So when we break it down to those factors, we can use microdosing. We can use it in a warm-up. We can use it as part of contrast in certain phases of our training because we know that we're going to get the adaptations that we want to see from our elite performers to make them more athletic, to give them more tools to be successful in their sport. So when we're talking about plyometrics, we're working the bottom end of the curve. This is the force velocity curve. So we're looking at from maximum strength to maximum velocity. And this is kind of a force profile of an athlete. When we use plyometrics, we're working the speed, strength, and the maximum velocity sections of the curve. So what should we expect to happen? So we should expect lower limb strength to increase. We should expect improvements in jump and sprint performance. We should expect an increase in lean body mass, and we should expect a decrease in body fat percentage. Okay, so coming back to the force velocity curve, we want to train aspects of this curve I've heard before from a few strength coaches this idea of surf the curve. So really looking at using each aspect of the curve in certain phases of training to increase the physical capabilities of our athletes. We want to shift the whole curve up and to the right. That's where we're producing more force at higher velocities. That's where we want our athletes to be. Okay. With the lower limb strength, obviously it's not going to be increasing it to the stage where we would increase if we were looking at 1 rep max and lifting 5 fives for strength increases. No, but we're looking at increasing lower limb strength in a sense of power and how we apply force. Okay, so my session idea with elite athletes, notice the difference between the junior athletes and the elite. Obviously, we can increase the sets or look to increase the sets and the repetitions based on the fact that the bodies are more prepared for high-level athletic movements and high-level plyometric movements. Now, like I said before, we still need to think about quality of movement and we still need to think about what phase of training are we in. Am I able to eccentrically load this athlete to a high level, or do I need to use a fewer contacts and look for quality of movement and look for pure rate of force development and ingraining these movement patterns into my athletes? Okay, so in this session idea, obviously, again, you can get your calculators out and kind of work out, if I do 3 sets, how do I get up to 120 foot contacts? But like I said before, we have to have a feeling for the individuality of our athletes as well. So it's very good to have an idea of how many foot contacts I'm going to plan for a session. But we also need to monitor throughout the session just to make sure that our athletes are intending to jump at 100% every time, intending to move with 100% focus and velocity every time. Okay, so in this session, we've got single leg toe taps, knee to foot to jump, lateral hop to box jump, and bounds. Okay, so firstly, single leg toe taps. We went through toe taps before. This is a progression to toe taps. Okay, still looking to pull the toes up. We're still imagining that the toes are on a piece of string and we're pulling the toes up and anticipating each landing. Now this can be almost imagine having a skipping rope, and this is what boxers do as skipping. Very similar movement. We're looking to make sure that we're having fast, strong contacts on the floor. Knee to foot to jump. Now this is a difficult exercise and slowly becoming one of my favorite exercises. Now this puts us in a compromised position after movement. Now we're looking at the athlete being in almost a seated box jump position when they pop up from their knees and then having to concentrically produce force and then get off the floor again. So we're looking for being in a compromised position when we get up to our feet. So when we get up to our feet, we're in a very compromised position and we're looking to try and produce concentric force as quickly and as much as we can. We're trying to get off the ground. Okay, so one more time. Obviously, we're worried about joint angles, quality of movement, how they land after the jump, but this is all about pure intent, pure speed. Okay, again, this athlete is rushing a little bit. I'd like to see them spend a little bit more time and just compose themselves before each jump. So we're really looking for the coaching and the visualization here being pop up, pop out. Okay, that's the way I like to think about it. Pop up to the feet, pop out of the floor. Okay, so we're looking for fast contacts. Okay, so lateral hop to box jump. This is almost starts to mimic a box jump, but we're looking at absorbing lateral force and producing vertical and horizontal force out of that. So this starts to become very specific to volleyball, where we're looking at moving laterally to then jump vertically. Okay, so we're still looking for fast contacts on the floor. This middle part here, where we land on the floor, should be a very fast contact, and we're looking to explode up and change the direction of this force. Okay, we should hear the foot contact. We should anticipate this jump. So we almost want our athletes to jump as soon as they hit the floor. This is one thing I like them to visualize, and one thing I like to reinforce with athletes is jump as soon as you contact the floor. Anticipate the landing. Okay. Nextly, we're looking at bounds. Okay. Now, bounds, 2-leg, we're looking for sharp contacts with the floor. So from the reverse angle. Now, a good way to visualize this and a good way to get our athletes to kind of see the performance is each time we contact the floor, we're looking to maintain the energy and jump further each time. So we can almost start to try and measure each jump. If each jump isn't further, then the quality of the movement isn't good. We're not maintaining force. We're not producing more force. Okay? So as you can see, each contact becomes sharper and faster. And we're looking to stick the landing at the end. Always stick the landing in a quarter squat, nice and sharp. We're looking for stiff landing, stiff legs. But again, it's all about anticipating the landing and getting your athletes to visualize that almost the floor is lava. This is such a simple idea. The floor is lava. We're trying to get off of the floor as quickly as possible. Anticipate the landing, the floor is lava. Okay, how can we progress or regress this session? So when we look at single leg toe taps, again, we went through it before with the range of motion, double leg versus single leg. Please go back and look at those. They're very important. And like I said before, there is a bank of videos in the learning resources, in the reading resources section. So make sure you go through those and just familiarize yourself with lots of different plyometric activities. Like I said before, I'm going through more jumping. Please look at the videos for change of direction and how we can build up there as well. Okay, so from single leg toe taps, we can look to go to drop jump. Now, drop jump increases the range of motion. So we're looking at going from stiff leg toe taps to drop jump, where we're really trying to explode out of the floor with bent knees. Okay, and obviously we can look at horizontal toe taps as a regression instead. Knee to foot to box jump is a progression to knee to foot jump. Okay, and then obviously we can just go knee to foot. So we can break that movement down and we can build it up also. Okay, the knee to foot is very good for looking at hip drive and looking for landing mechanics also. Okay, lateral hop and box jump, we can literally take that back down to drop jump to box jump. Okay, and then we can build that up to lateral hop to bounds instead. So we increase the number of repetitions we do, and we also change the focal point of that drill. Bounds, we can move up to single leg bounds and we can break it down to broad jump. Okay. Now, considerations for programming. We really need to think when we're looking at elite athletes and also junior athletes is time in the season. Time in the season has a big factor to play. When can I push my athletes with eccentric loading? When are they allowed to be sore almost? And when do I need to kind of think about dropping down and maybe looking more at coordination, looking more at a different way to get plyometric style activities into my sessions? Or is the training session plyometric enough? I like to consider that in volleyball, a training session is a plyometric session. If we're jumping 100 to 200 times in a session, that's 100 to 200 foot contacts in a plyometric movement. So also you need to think about, do I need to add in extra plyometric activities in this training block? Or is the training a plyometric style activity? So that comes in hand with overall training load. What other aspects are we using in our programming? What other loads do I need to think about? Okay, is the stress really high in this part of the season? Are we in a competitive part of the season, playoffs? Okay, maybe it's not the best idea to be doing eccentric, high stress activities. Maybe we should be looking more towards low level plyometrics, or maybe not even using plyometrics at all at this part of the season. Okay, so post-activation potentiation is an idea that we can actually produce this through our athletes. Now we need to test it because it's also been shown that it can be a very individual response, but we can use this at the end of our warm-up. If you look on the Science for Sport website, they have a good infographic on warm-up in the potentiation phase. So in this phase, we can use plyometric activities, 1 to 2 sets of different activities, and we can use it to potentiate the athlete and increase athletic performance within that session. So we can use it before a gym session. We can use jumping at the end of the warm-up before a skill session. So we can start to funnel in plyometric style activities into the warm-up of our athlete. This can increase the foot contacts of that session. Okay. Now, detraining has been shown that over a 16-week detraining period, we can actually maintain the adaptations we get from plyometric training. Now, this was 16 weeks of detraining where they only didn't do plyometric activities. They did still the gym work and they did skill sessions, and it was basketball. So like I said, they've almost considered that basketball training sessions can be considered as plyometric foot contacts. So this is a big consideration we must have, is what style of session and what style of block do we have on the pitch and off the pitch? Because they need to go hand in hand into overall training load. Okay, so the way I like to get it in, or the way I like to almost sneak in plyometric activities, post-activation potentiation as part of a warm-up, contrast, so we're looking at a back squat with a box jump, a drop jump, bounds, something, a deadlift with the same thing. So we're looking at the lift potentiates the plyometric movement. Okay, now potentiate just means that we get a higher physical performance, higher power output from the muscle, and it's usually anywhere between 8 to 12 minutes after the exercise. So we need to think about rest as well. Now, I've put some studies in the reading resources along these lines, so please make sure you go through and you read those, because I'm not going to go through everything in too much detail. I want to keep this as applicable as possible. And microdose, which means that we don't worry too much about the number of foot contacts. We're not trying to get them all the way up to 140 foot contacts, but maybe we aim for 60 to 80 foot contacts in a small session where we use intensity, high intense activities, but obviously we have only a small dose of it. So maybe 2 sets. Okay, so microdosing is more, again, that can be at the end of a warm-up. It can be after a skill session where we've not really worked the athletes too much physically. We've only been looking at very tactical movements. There's almost been a walkthrough session of tactics. Okay, at the end of that session, let's get the brains more focused towards, okay, physical aggression, but we don't want to cause too much eccentric loading. So microdosing is a good way to kind of have more foot contacts and make sure that we're trying to almost squeeze in and keep these adaptations that we want to get from our pre-season block or our pre-Christmas block whenever we can get plyometric training into our programming. Okay, the next section we're going to go through is rehabilitation. Now, I've put these references at the end of every section so that you can see what studies I've used in each section. Now, I've also put most of these studies into the reading resources, so please make sure you take the time to go through and read them.